This is what is left of the original connecting rod, which as you can see has severe corrosion. This is one of the ends, and as you can see where the nut should be, it's just pointed metal. Here you can see where I've used a hacksaw to cut through the original U-bolts to release the brass bushes, which can be reused. Before making a new connecting rod out of metal, I made one out of wood to ascertain the correct length, and here you can see me testing it. So this is probably the first time the wheels have turned by use of the handle in over 50 years. This is one of the ends of the new connecting rod, made out of 5mm flat bar. 2 of these were required. The connecting rod is made out of 20mm round bar, and here you can see I've made a jig to hold the ends in the correct position to the round bar for welding. Here you can see the finished connecting rod before painting. And here the connecting rod has been painted and then fitted between the handle and the crankshaft. Next I started work on the brake mechanism. Here you can see some 20mm square bar with a 13mm hole drilled in it, and next to that a 20mm round bar, which I took to Dave Wild, who put it in his lathe and turned the end down to just short of 13mm, so that it would fit in the 13mm hole you see there. So a big thank you to Dave for his help with that. Here you can see I have now welded the round bar into the square bar, and this makes up the bottom part of the brake pedal. This is the top part of the brake pedal, which is made from 5mm flat bar. Here you see at the bottom the new brake lever made out of 5mm flat bar with the original one above it. Both of them have the hinge section, which are newly made out of 5mm flat bar. Here you can see the original brake block hangers, which are in reasonable condition apart from the ends at the top there, which actually go through the chassis, where they have suffered some considerable corrosion. Talking this problem through with Ken Atkinson, one of our engineers, he suggested and supplied some large bolts of the similar diameter and some large washers, suggesting that he could weld the washers in place to make up new ones. Unfortunately, when I needed them welding, Ken had been taken poorly and was in a hospital. But luckily, when I needed them welding, Andy Richards was in doing some welding on another job, and so he welded the washers on for me to make the new brake block hangers. So a big thank you there to both Ken and Andy for playing their part in this restoration procedure. Here you can see the test fitting of the brake assembly with the spring on top held by a clamp to ascertain the final length of the 20mm square bar. Here you can see that the square bar has now been cut to length. It was then drilled and tapped to take an M6 bolt, and then the round pedal on top was drilled and countersunk, and then that is held on by a countersunk 6mm bolt. Now, as you can see so far, the pump cart is built as far as it can go apart from the floorboards. So at this point I stripped all the metalwork off the woodwork so that I could paint it, and this is what happens next. Here the framework has been given 2 coats of undercoat before a top coat of red. The next job before I started to fit the metalwork was to fit the 4 short pieces of floorboard as you see here. The reason these were done next were because they needed to be bolted through the floorboards and through the actual frame, so it was a lot easier to turn the frame on its side in order to do this. Once this was done, I started to refit the metalwork, as can be seen. The handles were made from 2" by 2" ash and were turned down on the lathe to fit into the metal handle, as can be seen here. Here you can see the floorboards in the process of being fitted. And here we have the finished pump cart, which is now ready to go to the railway to be tested on the lines. This is just a side view, and here we have a close-up of the sign on the side of the bottom of the gallows frame. On the 10th of August, Craig brought a trailer, and with the help of Ken, Dave, Craig and Paul Briggs, we loaded the pump cart ready to go to the railway for testing. Here we see the completed pump cart returning to the railway for the first time in many years. From left to right we see Craig Benton, Ken Lees, Dave Wild and Paul Briggs unloading the pump cart from the trolley in preparation for putting it on the track for the first time. And here we see the pump cart finally back on the track for the first time in almost 50 years. Here we see Ken and Dave enjoying themselves on one of the very first test runs.
Yeah, I know. God, I was earlier. Unfortunately, it was.
After testing was finished, we load the pump cart back onto the trailer, where we took it across to Craig's warehouse, where it's going to be kept until the unveiling.